Welcome back to my channel, Curated Chaos, where I will be covering true crime cases. Today we will be covering the tragic case of Nicole Vanderheyden, where Friday night out resulted in her never coming home again. Nicole was born March 29th, 1985 in Manahawk, Wisconsin. Nicole graduated high school in 2003 and went on to continue her education at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. She was a double major in science and education, and she received her degree in 2010, which is very impressive because I feel like being in college is super stressful. It's a lot of work. So to double in two majors is very impressive. After graduating college, Nicole went on to become a substitute teacher for the Green Bay public school system, and she also married her first husband, and they had two children together. Unfortunately, this marriage did not work out, and in 2012, the couple decided to separate. And after this divorce, Nicole just decided that she really wanted to focus on herself, focus on being the best mom that she could, and really just take time for herself after going through something as traumatic as a divorce. In 2015, Nikki met a man named Doug Dietrich, and they really hit it off. The relationship moved relatively quickly, and they soon decided to move in together, and soon found out that Nikki was pregnant with the couple's first baby, and they were both super excited about the new addition to their family. On May 20th, 2016, the couple decided that they wanted to go ahead, hire a babysitter for the night, go out on the town, and they wanted to meet up with some friends at a local bar called the Watering Hole. The Watering Hole was basically like a big adult playground. They had tons of games. They had a sand volleyball court. They had live music. And the bar actually overlooked the water, which just made it a really great atmosphere to come hang out, have a few drinks, and enjoy the time. And the couple was going there specifically to see a band that night. When the couple arrived, Doug actually ended up seeing a few people that he went to high school with, and you know how it is when you see your friends you haven't seen in a while. He just went to have a few drinks, catch up with his friends from high school, and after a while, Nicole started getting a little jealous. She noticed that Doug was talking to another female and noticed that he was spending a lot of time talking to her. And Nicole felt like Doug was ignoring her and not showing her the attention that she wanted. They were supposed to be out on the town and hanging out together, and there he was giving this other woman all the attention. So after this incident, Nicole decided that her and her friends were going to leave the bar they were at, the Watering Hole, and they were going to go down the street to a different bar called the Sardine Can. Security footage from the Sardine Can showed Nicole having a really good time, enjoying her friends, enjoying a few drinks, just laughing and having fun. But as the night went on, her mood kind of shifted. She started to become a little bit more irritable, a little bit more upset, and that could possibly be, once the alcohol hits you. And, some people start acting different, some people get in their feelings. So as the night went on, Nicole just seemed to become more and more agitated. And she started to text Doug a ton of different messages accusing him of being abusive, accusing him of being controlling, and accusing him of cheating on her. Nicole then decides that she wants to call Doug because he still has not come to meet them at this new bar, and she's starting to wonder, like, where is he? What's he doing? She wants to be with her man. Like, it's Friday night, they're supposed to be hanging out, and she wants to know where her man is. So she gives him a call, but Doug doesn't pick up her call. So one of the couple's male friends decides he's going to try and call Doug, see if he answers, and Doug does in fact answer his phone. And this just makes Nicole even more pissed off because why are you answering your friend's calls but you're not answering my calls? Like, what's going on, sir? So at this point, Nicole is fed up. She is over it and she is ready to go. So she actually ends up storming out of the bar with her friends chasing after her, trying to convince her to come back inside, calm down, just have a good night, and Doug will be there soon. But she is not having it. She does not want to hear that. She's ready to go. So while in the midst of her male friend trying to convince her to come back to the bar, she actually ends up getting a little physical with him. They have a little physical altercation. And this may be because, she has a little bit of alcohol in her. She's not really in her right mind. So she lashes out a little bit. And the male friend decides, like, hey, I want no parts. I don't want no problems. So I'm going to go ahead back inside. So he stands in the street for a little bit and watches her walk away, and she ends up turning left, and then that is the last that any of her friends saw her for the night. And Doug does end up making his way to the sardine can where the rest of the group is at, but he doesn't see Nicole and assumes that she just went home. So after having a few drinks, he decides to head home himself, but he is surprised to see that the babysitter is still at the house watching the kids, and Nicole is nowhere to be found. Doug figures that Nicole is just still out blowing off some steam and she'll be back soon. So he relieves the babysitter of her duties and he ends up just going to bed, expecting Nicole to come home when she's ready. Doug ends up waking up in the middle of the night because he needs to tend to their youngest child, and he notices that Nicole still isn't home yet, but he's not too concerned about it. So he just tends to the baby and then ends up going back to sleep. On May 21st, 2016, a farmer would make a gruesome discovery. Nicole's body would be found half naked, lying in a field with bruising and evidence of strangulation. Nicole had been savagely beaten with obvious trauma to the side of her head, as well as scrapes and abrasions on her body and her back. And the autopsy revealed that she had 240 injuries, which is crazy. And that includes things big like the blunt force trauma, and then as well as the small injuries like the little scratches and scrapes. Each scratch and scrape counts as an injury. So altogether, she had 240 injuries throughout her body. The cause of death was ruled as strangulation as well as blunt force trauma because the medical examiner couldn't determine which came first or if they happened simultaneously. So they decided to rule both of them as the cause of death. And in situations like this, we all know the significant other is always the first one authorities look at when something happens to a spouse, a girlfriend. They're always going to look at the significant other first. And being as though Doug and Nicole were fighting the night before and having their disagreements, as well as the fact that police found blood outside of the couple's home, as well as shoes inside of the couple's home that matched the shoe prints on Nicole's back. And this resulted in Doug being arrested as a suspect in Nicole's murder, as well as him having a $1 million bond. After about 17 days, though, Doug was released from police custody and ruled out as a suspect. It turned out that he was wearing a Fitbit the night of the murders, and the Fitbit determined that he only took about 12 steps at the time that the murders occurred, so he couldn't have possibly murdered Nicole, dragged her body out to the field, and came back to the house with just 12 steps. And it's believed that these 12 steps came in when he woke up in the middle of the night to tend to their kids. So he woke up, took about 12 steps, and went back to bed. So he was ruled out as a suspect. And it would take police about 3 months after Nicole's murder to find their next suspect. So after 3 months, the crime lab determined that DNA had been found on the socks that Nicole was wearing the night of the murder. And when they found her, the lab had determined that the DNA found on Nicole's socks actually matched someone that they already had in their system from previous arrest. This DNA belonged to a man named George Stephen Birch. And Birch actually has a long criminal history. So let me tell you about that. In 1997, he was convicted for damaging property, and in 98, he was convicted for burglary and possession of a concealed weapon. In 2011, he was arrested for drunk driving and possession of marijuana, and in 2016, he was arrested for grand larceny. So, all in all, just, not a good guy. And he also was acquitted of murder at the age of 20 years old. So he already has a history of violence. He already has a history of just being a career criminal. So it's really looking like this could be their person. So as I said, he moved to Wisconsin looking for a fresh start, and one of his friends actually ended up giving him a job and loaning him a car. And this is going to be important because this car comes into play later on in the story. So while police are investigating Nicole's murder, they are also simultaneously investigating a hit and run incident that Birch's car seems to be involved in. So it's all kind of starting to come together. When Birch is being interrogated for this hit and run incident, he actually ends up giving police permission to take his phone and make a copy of it, something that he will soon regret doing. Birch's internet history would reveal that there were 64 searches related to Nicole's murder, and his location history would reveal that he was in the same vicinity of the bar that she visited that night, as well as where some of her clothes were found later dumped. Location records also show that he was at the crime scene. He was at the site where they had found Nicole's body. Investigators believe that after she had left her friends at the bar, she ended up at a different bar nearby where she had met Birch. It's believed that they had a friendly conversation and he offered her a ride home, which she accepted, that ended up ending in a tragic ending. And along the way, they don't know exactly what happened, but it's believed that he assaulted her and ended up murdering her and leaving her body in that field. So, of course, Stephen Birch is arrested and charged with first-degree murder. And during trial, Stephen and his defense attorney had an interesting story of how they say the night went down. Stephen says that he met Nicole at a bar, offered to give her a ride home, and when they got to her place, things started to transpire in the driveway in his car, and that's when her boyfriend, Doug Dietrich, came out and caught them in the car. Stephen says that Doug was enraged to find the two in his car, and he just lost it and ended up murdering Nicole himself. Stephen Birch says that after Doug murdered Nicole, he threatened him at gunpoint and forced him to help Doug conceal the body. Now, there are a few things wrong with Stephen's story. First and foremost, police already have evidence that Doug never left the home that night. He only took 12 steps during the times that the murder transpired, so he couldn't have possibly murdered Nicole and took her body out to a field. Additionally, Stephen Birch is like 6'7", 270 pounds. That means that he is 5 inches taller than Doug Dietrich and weighs 70 pounds more than him. This makes it very unlikely that Dietrich would have been able to overpower Birch and force him to do anything at gunpoint. It just didn't make sense. The jury found Stephen Birch guilty of first-degree murder, and even with all the evidence against him, Birch still had the nerve to appeal his sentence. So Birch argued that police shouldn't have been able to use information gathered from his previous arrest, the one where he was suspected of a hit and run, and be able to use that in the current case. But when he gave consent for police to copy his phone, he never gave them any restrictions. He never said what they could look for, what they couldn't look for, how long they could use the information, or what they could use the information for. So courts ruled that this was not a violation of his rights. He also argued that prosecution shouldn't have been able to use the information from Dietrich's Fitbit because it wasn't authenticated, but the courts ruled that the Fitbit was self-authenticating, so that failed too. So he's in prison for life. And this case was just so tragic. It was so random. She was a victim of opportunity. And I always think it's so sad when people who have multiple criminal records, multiple felonies, he was accused of murder, yet he was still able to roam the streets and claim a victim. And I think that's just so sad. But I'm happy that justice was served. He is serving life in prison and will never be able to harm an innocent soul again. And I do apologize for like the changing quality. My camera died for the last few minutes of this video, so I used my phone. And here is how the look came out. Let me know what you think, and I will see you in my next video.